Tadadam bye 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 bye. Yay bye 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 yay bye bye. Tadadam bye bye bye. Yay bye 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 yay bye oh bye bye. Yay bye bye. Yay bye 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 yay bye oh bye bye. Yay bye bye. Yay bye 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 bye. Tadadam bye bye bye. Yum bye 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 bye. Tadadam bye bye bye. Yay bye 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 oh bye bye. Yay bye bye. Yay bye 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 oh bye bye. Yay bye bye. Yay bye bye bye. Yay bye bye.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
It is wonderful to welcome you here to Temple Shir Tikva. Those of you who are watching via the live stream, those who are back in the sanctuary, whether this is your first time back in the sanctuary for a while or if you've been coming every week, it's lovely to see you and to see your faces with us as we join together for this service. I'm delighted to be joined this evening by Cantor Hollis and Susan DeSelms for the music, and John and Richard, who are making sure that those of you at home can see the service and can hopefully hear us as well. Shabbat comes as this much-needed rest at the end of the week. It's amazing how long 6 days can sometimes feel, and how necessary at the culmination of those 6 days it really is to be together in this sacred community. To take a deep breath, to exhale all that we've experienced, and to allow ourselves what is really a gift of these 25 hours, a gift to be together in community, a gift to put aside work and some of those everyday tasks, to rest, to focus on the divine and sacred, and to be together with one another. And so I'm going to ask everyone to take a neshima amuka, a deep breath. We can exhale the week that has been. Take another deep breath for us to enter into Shabbat. As we turn to page 24 in our Siddurim and welcome the Shabbat angels with the words of Shalom Aleichem.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei HaSharet, Malachei Elyon, Melech, Malachei HaMlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Boechem leShalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech, Malachei HaMlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Boechem leShalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech, Malachei HaMlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Barchuni, Barchuni leShalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Tzedchem leShalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei HaMlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Turn back in our Siddurim to page 2 and 3 as we light our Shabbat candles. Try again to light our Shabbat candles.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
With the light of the Shabbat candles illuminating our sanctuary in our hearts, we turn together to page 20 and 21, because after all, Shabbat is a wedding day when we get married each and every week, welcoming the Shabbat bride into our midst with the words of Lecha Dodi. And so we'll sing together that first, second, fifth, eighth, and ninth verses. And when we get to that final ninth verse, we'll rise as we would at a wedding to welcome the Shabbat bride. Lecha Dodi on page 20.
Lecha Dodi likrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nekabela. Oh, Lecha Dodi likrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor v'dibar echad, Hishmianu el hamiyuchad. Adonai echad u'shmo echad, L'shem u'tiferet v'litina. Oh, Lecha Dodi likrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nekabelha. Oh, Lecha Dodi likrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nekabelha. Likrat Shabbat lechu b'melcha, ki mekol habracha. Merosh mikedem nesucha, sof maseh b'machshava tehila. Oh, Lecha Dodi likrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nekabela. Oh, Lecha Dodi likrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nekabela. Hitoreri, ki vareku miori, uri, shir daberi, ki vad Adonai alai likla. Oh, Lecha Dodi Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Yaminu smol tifratzi ve'at Adonai taritzi al yad ish ben partzi v'nismicha v'nagila olecha dudi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nekabela olecha dudi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nekabela Boi v'shalom hateret bala gam b'simcha u'tzala toch emunei hamsigula boi chala olecha dodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nekabela olecha dodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nekabela. We turn the page, and 11 lines down, we find Ma Gadlu Ma'asechaya. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Ma Gadlu Ma'asechaya.
Having welcomed the Shabbat bride, we now take a moment to welcome one another. So if you're in the sanctuary, you can give a wave and say hello to those who are around you. If you're at home with people, please do, if it's comfortable, give them a Shabbat hug or a Shabbat wave. And if you're with people, wish you were with certain people, you can always take your phone out, send them a text message. I know that Cantolis and I love when we see those text messages coming around to wish everyone a Shabbat Shalom, wherever you may be joining us for this service. There are people in the sanctuary, so we're going to give them a moment to say Shabbat Shalom to one another, which we haven't had to do for a while. So it's nice to have that taking place around us.
Real life people greeting one another. It's a beautiful thing.
And so I have to be the bad guy again and say, I'm sorry to interrupt your conversations. I've missed saying that.
And now we know we're back.
Yes, so now we're back. So we can ask if people will please be seated as we turn to page 26 in our Siddurim and continue with the words of the Chatzi Kaddish. Amen.
ובזמן קריב והימרו. אמן. יהי שמירה במבורך, לעולם עולם לעולמיה. יתברך, יתברך וישתבח, ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה, שמי דקדושה בריחו, לילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירן לעמה ויאמרו Amen.
We rise in body or in spirit facing towards the east for our call to prayer, the Baruch Hu on page 28.
Am I awake? Am I prepared? Are you listening to my prayer? Can you hear my voice? Can you understand? Am I awake? Am I prepared? Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam va'ed. Le'olam va'ed. Yadalai, 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 yadalai,
If you'll please be seated. We turn together to page 30 and 31, and we read on the top of page 31. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way on which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars. Creator of the tide of time and light, you guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows.
Baruch atah Adonai, Hamariv Aravim.
On the next page, our prayer of love between Israel and God. Ahavat olam Beit Yisrael amcha ahavta, Torah u'mitzvot, chukim u'mishpatim, otanu limadata. Al ken Adonai Eloheinu b'shochbeinu, uvkumeinu nasiach b'chukecha, v'nismach b'divrei Toratecha, uv'mitzvotecha leolam va'ed, ki hem chayenu v'orech yameinu, uvahem negei, yomam v'layla.
Ve'ahavatecha al tasir mimenu leolamim. Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amu Israel. Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבביך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם, וישיבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם להות על ידך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
As we turn to page 40, and the song that we sang after we crossed over the sea, after we left Egypt behind, the imagery of Mitzrayim, of that narrow place, that place that kind of constricted us and tormented us, is a powerful one for us to relate to in a variety of different ways. As I stand here this Shabbat, I think of my Mitzrayim as having been the registry of motor vehicles this past day, trying to emerge, having booked an appointment, having shown up, having queued and queued and queued and waited and waited and waited. I feared that I would still be in Revere when the service was starting. But nonetheless, I emerged from that Egypt. And as we think about the Egypts in our lives, singing this song every day challenges us to leave behind those narrow places. And so on this Shabbat, as we come together in this space, as we sing this song of freedom, I want to encourage us all to think about an Egypt that we want to leave behind. A place that might have constricted us, a mood, an environment, a feeling, whatever it might have been. Find that way to cross over the sea with these words, and as we sing this song, to stretch out and to appreciate the freedom. Every day has the opportunity to leave a Mitzrayim, a narrow place, behind. And we can do it together as a community as we sing the words on page 40.
Mi chamocha bailim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh, norati Lord, o sefela, mi chamocha bailim Adonai. Ze
On page 42, Hashkivenu, our prayer for the evening.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom ve'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim l'chaim Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom ve'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim l'chaim ufros aleinu sukkot shlomecha ufros aleinu sukkot shlomecha Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom ve'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim l'chaim.
We turn to page 46. We rise in body or in spirit for the words of the Amidah, our standing prayer.
Tiftach ufi yagi tehilatecha Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei avoteinu v'imoteinu Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor ve'hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Ve'konei Hakol, Ve'zocher Chastei Avot V'imahot, Umevi Geula Livnei V'neihem, Leman Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshiach U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, Vezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechei Meitim Atah, Rav Lehoshia, Mashiv HaRuach U'Morid HaGashem, Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed, Mechayei Meitim Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim Verofech Olim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayem Emunato, Lishenei Afan, Michamocha Bar Gevurot, Umidol Melach, Melech Meimit Umechaye, Umatzmiach Yeshua, Beneman Hatale Hachayot Mehitim, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechaye Hamhetim, Atah Kadosh V'Shimcha Kadosh, Kedoshim B'chol Yom Yahalelucha Selha, Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh.
We continue silently with our own private Amidah, using the words of our hearts or the words of the Siddur through until page 62. Please feel free to be seated at the conclusion of your own prayers.
The words to Dodi Lee are found on page 11. Dodi Lee vani lo harohe bashoshanim Dodi Lee Dodi Lee vani lo harohe bashoshanim Dodi Lee Mizat olamin hamidbar mikutaret moru levona libatini achoti chala achoti chala Dodi Li vani lo harohe bashoshanim Dodi Li Dodi Li vani lo harohe bashoshanim Dodi Li I am for you, you are for me. Bashoshanim Dodi Li I am for you, you are for me. Bashoshanim Dodi Li
As we turn in our Siddurim to page 253, we know that Shabbat is a day of joy and celebration, but there are those amongst us who are suffering, those in need of healing of the mind, body, soul, or spirit. And so we take a moment now to offer a Misha Berach prayer for their healing. This Shabbat we pray for healing for Abba Noach Ben Yehudit, Eliza Dorfman, Avivia Sigalit Bat Devora, Barb Scaglione, Barbara Lanzet, Barbara Ziman, Dalia Harel, David Feldman, Dee Lurie, Diane McCaslin, Dina Lutin, Devorah Bat Bunye, Eleanor Lustig, Eli Lerner, Emma Held, Ethan Kadish, Eva Jacob, Gemma Rose Nicoletti, Georgia Elizabeth Hummel, Golda Bat Udi, Harav Nechama Bat Yaakov Uvernis, Herb Levine, James Nicoletti, Jeremy Pivor, Jerry Rosenstein, Jim Solomon, Joan Friedman, Joyce Pastor, Julian Arcee, Julie Elizabeth, Kelly Lane, Leah Bat Fagler, Lily Stander, Lisa Shapiro, Lynn Bauer, Mark Lampert, Meir Abba Ben Ruven, Michael Kay, Moshe Yoel Ben Esther Avram, Mordechai Ben Moshe, Motel Lieber, Nachum Ben Razel, Natana Eliori, Yitzchak Bat Shoshana Gila, Nechama Bat Trainer Raziel, Noah Ayal Mi Beit Yaakov Vasara, Nolly Platt, Pam Ross, Pazia Bat Leah, Peter Gross, Pinchas Aaron Ben Shalom Mordechai Vasara Leah, Richard Kirstein, Robert Friedman, Romildo Siqueiro, Ron Abramson, Sam Goldenberg, Sarah Fager Bat Malka, Sarit Liat Bat Panina Sarah, Sol Munvis, Stanley Sakowitz, Stephen Rose, Susan Hoyer, Susan Scheller, Tara Sagor, Theodore Merkin, Tyson Putinus, Wendy Gully, Yaakov Ben Sarah Leah, Yaakov Yosef Ben Avram, Yehuda Ben Avraham, Yitzchak David Ben Sarah Leah, and Yosef Ben Gittel. If there are other names you're thinking of in need of healing, please share them as I look around the room. We join together in offering this prayer for healing.
Mi sheberach avotenu v'imotenu, Avraham, Yitzchak, v'Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, v'Leah, hu yivarach et ha'cholim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu yamalei rachamim alehem, lecha chalimam urapotam ulecha chazikam, Vishlach lahem mehera refuatan shlema min hashamayim, refuatan nefesh urefuat haguf, hashtabagalau vizman kariv, venomar Amen.
My friend, colleague, and mentor, Rabbi Erwin Zeplowitz, shared the following joke. Two Jews were sitting on a train in Nazi Germany. One of them was reading a Yiddish newspaper, while the other was reading Der Stürmer, the publication associated with the Nazi Party. The man reading the Yiddish paper kept looking up at the other man with a puzzled look on his face. Eventually, he could contain himself no longer. He said to his fellow Jew, "How can you read that awful anti-Semitic rag?" The man responded, "When I read the Jewish newspapers, all I hear about is the suffering, the tsuras, the problems, the anti-Semitism. It's always bad news. But when I read the Stürmer, I read about how the Jews are rich and powerful, and I prefer those stories." I doubt that anyone in the Jewish community in Nazi Germany was reading Der Stürmer for pleasure. But the joke is revealing of our Jewish tendency to try to bring humor to difficult situations. It is also instructive of the fact that we have a choice sometimes in how we consume the news. We can focus on the positive, or we can focus on the negative. And the news is always all around us. The question is how we choose to consume it and receive it. I have to be honest and say that I've been feeling a little bit overwhelmed by the bad news in our corner of the world and impacting the Jewish community in the last month or so. In that month, we've witnessed a terrorist attack and the taking of hostages at Congregation Beth Israel in Colleyville. There was the incident with Whoopi Goldberg and the debate over identity, with Jews questioned in the context of whether the Holocaust was really a racially motivated crime. And while all of this was happening, there were the ongoing delays at the confirmation of Dr. Deborah Lipstadt as the U.S. Special Envoy to monitor and combat anti-Semitism. She was nominated over 6 months ago and is yet to be confirmed. Just yesterday, the Anti-Defamation League held a day of action to urge the Senate to finally confirm Dr. Lipstadt to her ambassadorial position. We could say, Dayenu, this is surely enough. But we've also had a state senator suggesting that teachers should be impartial when teaching about Nazism and fascism. And we had another US congressman comparing vaccine mandates to the Holocaust. And maybe because of the circles that I follow, I've been reading a lot about David Baddiel's book, Jews Don't Count, and Dara Horn's book, People Love Dead Jews. It's been a month where it feels like anti-Semitism has been out there in the ether. And I know that I've been slightly more attuned to it because over the past couple of weeks, I had to prepare and teach sessions about racism and anti-Semitism for the Islamic Center of Boston and for the Wayland Public Schools, respectively. It would be easy to throw up our hands and to lament the rising levels of anti-Semitism, to declare that the situation is dire, and to want to give up in the face of all this bad news. But there is another way to look at things. It's not that I think we should put on rose-tinted spectacles and ignore all of the negatives and bad news that we experience around us. In fact, we do need to redouble our efforts to fight anti-Semitism and hate wherever we encounter it. But at the same time, I think we can also choose to see things from a slightly different perspective and try to celebrate the positives. I do not say this because I think it will make us feel better. I say this because actually I truly believe that we are not doing enough to celebrate and share the good news that there is in the midst of this challenging time. At the Science Museum in Boston, there is a wall which includes a series of optical illusions. With just a slight change in perspective, the image shifts. I'm thinking particularly of a picture which they have that viewed one way shows a young lady looking off into the distance. But with a change of focus, it becomes a downcast old woman. With just a slight change in our perspective, everything can look very different. And that's the case, I think, with the anti-Semitism and the hate that we are witnessing right now around us. We can and should protest that Dr. Lipstadt has yet to be confirmed as the ambassador confronting anti-Semitism. It is a stain on the Senate that they are playing politics over such an important appointment. But we cannot lose sight of the fact that America in 2021 has the president nominating arguably the world's leading Holocaust historian to fill an official ambassadorial position representing this country confronting anti-Semitism. That is quite an amazing statement that is being made by the US government, and we should be pleased to know that this position exists and hopefully will soon be filled. I was personally feeling a little overwhelmed preparing sessions about racism and anti-Semitism in the space of a week. But at the same time, I also want to find the opportunity to take a step back and celebrate the fact that I, as a representative of this synagogue, and by extension the Jewish people, was being invited to present and speak about those issues. It is sad that Wayland Middle School felt the need to devote a day to combating racism and hate. But it is to be applauded that they made the choice to take a day out of their schedule to confront these issues. And we should be especially pleased that they invited a rabbi to offer a session about anti-Semitism as part of the way in which they were confronting the issue. And I am always uplifted by the close friendship and partnership which we have with our Muslim friends across the road. That is certainly not the way that things are often presented in the media and in the world around us. Being honest, I'm probably still flying a bit high from the experience of last Sunday when we joined with our friends at the United Parish of Brookline for their Sunday service. It is always a highlight of our synagogue calendar, and it was wonderful to be together in person after 2 years in which we had to conduct these services digitally. And yes, we can lament the fact that our choirs could not share in the worship experience. But that negative did allow for a focus on Cantor Hollis, Susan DeSelms, and their soloist, Helen Hassinger, for the music. And it also meant that the liturgical choices could encourage more participation from the community. This meant that for the closing song, Cantor Hollis led the community in singing a Yiddish poem to conclude their Sunday worship service. She introduced the words of the chorus, Soll sein kommen die Geula, may our salvation come, Moshiach kommt schon bald, the Messiah will soon be heard. And then she began singing. And when we got to the chorus, members of the church joined in, singing these Yiddish words as part of their liturgy, of their worship, of their service. The first time round, several voices around the sanctuary, and especially Kent, could also be heard joining with Cantor Hollis. The second time, it was a majority of the community who were singing and joining in. And from that point forward, it felt like the entire building was filled with those united voices of each member of that community singing Yiddish in that 150-year-old church in Brookline. If we just had a church singing a song in Yiddish, we could say Dayenu. That should be enough. But this Yiddish poem was written by Shmerik Kaczynski. I still can't pronounce that name, Hollis. To raise the morale of Holocaust survivors in displaced persons camp across Europe. Can you imagine what he would have thought of the fact that his poem had been transported to America and was being sung by a church as part of a weekend of shared worship with a synagogue? Dayenu. That should have been enough. But then there are the words that the community were reciting. May our salvation come, the Messiah will soon be heard. Jews and Christians singing in Yiddish about salvation and the Messiah. It didn't sound like a far-off dream in that moment. It sounded like something immediate and present in the sacred space of that church community. It was a beautiful moment on so many levels, but also an important counterpoint to all of the negative stories we tend to read. We read about division and enmity, about conflicts between religious groups, about rising anti-Semitism and hate. And yet here we were singing Yiddish in church on a Sunday. We never read those stories about a church and a synagogue coming together, about communities united in prayer and song, about shared hopes across religious boundaries for salvation. These are the good stories that are taking place all around us each and every day, and we just need that little shift in focus and perspective to open our eyes wide enough to be able to see them. In this week's Torah portion, we read the story of the golden calf, and often we focus on that ultimate sin committed by the Israelite community. Moses returning down the mountain, hearing the commotion in the camp, smashing the original 10 commandments and those 2 tablets. And we could stop there, focusing on that as a bad news story. Israelite sin, the death that followed, and the smashed tablets. But with a slight change in focus, we can also look at the fact that after the sin of the golden calf, God called on Moses to create a new set of tablets. And God then inscribed upon those tablets created by Moses the 10 commandments once again. The original tablets were purely of divine creation. We weren't involved. The second set of tablets, born out of that negative, were an example of human and divine partnership. Those second set of tablets could be carried, could be held forward by the people, carried by Moses, and set in front of all the congregation, not to be broken. It's a change in perspective, but how often do we focus this week purely on the sin of the golden calf and not on the positive of this second set of tablets, a symbol of God's forgiveness and of our divine human partnership? We cannot and should not turn a blind eye to the bad news that is around us. We have to remain alert and combat it wherever we encounter it. But we should also open our eyes that little bit wider, shift our focus and our perspective so that we can also recognize that which is good and positive. With a slight change of perspective, everything might not be just as bad as the media sometimes presents it. And perhaps we can be that counterpoint, sharing the good news with everyone around us. Shabbat Shalom. As we return to our prayer books, to our Siddurim, we turn to the Aleinu that we'll find on page 282. We rise in body or in spirit, facing towards the east.
Yesher koch. Aleinu leshabeach lahadon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, לתקן עולם במלכות שדי, ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא, ביום ההוא, יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו, ושמו, ושמו אחד.
As we turn to page 294 in our Siddurim, we never conclude a service without sacred memory, remembering our loved ones who are no longer with us. This Shabbat, we remember the yahrzeits of Mary Jane Adelson, David Battis, Abram Baumgarten, David Aaron Bear, Pearl Black, Beatrice Bronstein, Jonathan Eric Cohen, Louis Dress, Hannah Dudkin, Ivan Fagan, Herbert J. Finkelstein, Julius Fryer, Edith Gimple, Sigmund Goldner, Lois F. Green, Morris Gracer, Ted Hegvik, Mitchell O'Honig, Sylvia Jaffe, Bernard Kay, Ruth Levitt, Judith Steen McLean, Ruth Pastor, Rhoda Roblin, Edwin Rossman, Harriet Savell, Ruth Schwartz, Oscar Schwartz, and Marvin Zeskind. And during the month of Shloshim, we remember Frances Jacobson, the mother of Leslie Jacobson Kay, Charlotte Yorks, the mother of Joanne Yorks, and Sylvia Goldman, the grandmother of Jackie Adelson. If there are other names that you're remembering this Shabbat, please share them as I look around the sanctuary. For all those we name out loud and for those we name in our hearts, we join together. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Be'almadi v'rach yirutei v'amlich malchutei. B'chayachonu v'yomechonu v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael. B'galau v'zman kariv v'imru Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach la'alam ulmei al-maya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ah v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitada v'yitalei v'yitalal shmei dikudsha b'richu. La'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tush b'chata v'nechemata. Dam iran ba'alma v'imru Amen. Yehei shlama Rabbah min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. Oseh shalom bimromav. Hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. Zichronam livracha. May their memories always be for a blessing. And let us say, Amen. So as we turn back in our Siddurim to page 5 to make Kiddush and recite the blessing of Motzi, just a couple of announcements. Our congregational survey is out there. We have had 37% of families respond. We'd love to get to 100%. 10 days, 10 more days. So please do take the time, check your email, fill in the survey. The more responses we get, the better it will be for us to plan moving forward. In terms of education in the community, our Wednesday morning text study class is taking a break for the next couple of weeks and will resume on March 9th. The Adult Community Engagement Group is hosting a festival for short films on February 24th at 7 p.m. online. You can see the weekly schedule for registration and links. Rabbi Geordie's 10 Commandments class is still on Thursdays at 10 o'clock, and you can join her there. And we are resuming our series, Favorite Biblical Characters, together with Temple Beth Shalom, Temple Isaiah, and Temple Shalom. It restarts on March 17th. If you registered, it's the same Zoom link. If you haven't registered, check the email and the website for registration details. And finally, just to say, we are hosting CJSP's Active Response Security Training here in March and in April. If you check the weekly newsletter, you can register if you would like to join us to receive that security training. With that, we're going to turn to Kiddush. We say thank you to Susan Selms for the beautiful music, so I'll forget at the end of the service. Otherwise, I'm remembering now to Cantor Hollis for our beautiful music, and together, and to John and to Richard for the tech side of things, as we join together now in reciting the Kiddush.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho v'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu, zikarun lema'aseh v'reishit, ki hu yom tehila lemnikrai kodesh, zecher litziat Mitzrayim, ki vanu v'chata v'tanu kidashta im kol habib v'shabbat kodshecha be'ava uvratzon hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh haShabbat l'chaim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom.